Hey everybody, welcome to Geeksvana Live. Thank you very much for joining us this evening. We're going to be talking about something exciting this evening regarding beyond visual line of sight operations with drones here in the UK. Because recently the CAA have enabled beyond visual line of sight drone flights to happen on a more routine basis in the UK. This is part of their plan to open up the skies of the UK to more drone flights. They word it as their roadmap to enabling regular and routine drone operations across society, whatever that means, by 2027. It is unique for a few reasons, and we will be getting into the meat of the announcements during this show this evening. However, we're also going to keep away from too much of the technical side. Instead, you can join us for a deeper dive soon over on the members channel, including potentially a couple of very special guests. That way we can break down far more information over there for the people that want to hear all of the technical side of things. So first of all, let's bring in our co-host for this evening, who is, of course, could it be anybody else, but especially for this topic, it's Graham.
Hello.
How are you?
I'm colourful, thank you.
Now, is this your Peruvian garb?
Yeah. I think it's from Nepal. I think it's hand knitted from baby's hair in Nepal.
Is that from Nepal, or it's appalling? I'm not sure. I'm not sure which one of that is.
I'll go with either. It's lovely.
Yes. Oh, it's
children. 70s children entertainer.
Absolutely. It's wonderful. Now, some of the unique parts of this new policy from the CAA that I think are important in terms of the direction that this is going to be taking drone flights in the UK include a couple of little things I wanted to highlight here. Now, it's been achieved through a policy and not a change to legislation. Now, Graham, this is important, isn't it? Because this is something, therefore, as per the next tile, it's the specific category, not the specified category. So this is pretty much utilizing where we are now in the airspace and in terms of the regulations. This isn't waiting for a sign off. This isn't waiting for new training to happen or suddenly
airworthiness.
Suddenly the certified category to spring into life. This is under the specific category. It's something that you can apply for right now, and under the existing application processes. Basically, it's a policy essentially on top of everything else to make some of these things happen, which is exciting, isn't it?
It is. I mean, I think the CAA has a lot of flexibility within the regulations for the specific category. Essentially, it's about proving that things are safe, and they've come up with this method of essentially pointing us all at a mitigation which they're prepared to accept.
Exactly, and the mitigation they're looking for isn't just specifically on safety as such, but it's actually mid-air collision, because of course that's what BVLOS is based on, and we'll come on to that. Also, one of the highlights for me in this particular type of BVLOS flying is that there's going to be little to really no impact on normal recreational flight, because of course this is all happening again within the specific category. I promise to stop saying specific category too much. But this is all happening within the usual airspace. So actually, as long as everybody's flying legally, there's no reason to put out restrictions or anything of that nature to stop people flying their Mini 3 drone in the area, etc. Because the people operating BVLOS will have mitigations in place to deal with that situation, basically.
Correct. Yeah, absolutely. It's nice and clean from that point of view. I mean, it makes it a little bit tricky for the operators, but yeah, it's shared airspace. At the moment, there are all sorts of trials going on of BVLOS, but they are within very tightly defined and restricted, and that's the important word, restricted airspace of various types.
Exactly. They are segregated airspace trials, essentially, temporary danger areas. And yeah, exactly. So at least with this, now, in terms of NOTAMs, etc., it'll be interesting to see how that gets handled. But certainly there won't be any specific, there'll be no specific mechanism through this policy to restrict the airspace, because there's no airspace change required under the application. So yes, so to me, I think that's also a pat on the back from the point of view that they've managed to put this policy together without affecting everybody. You know, we're not suddenly going to have every railway line or every power line having a 5-mile radius of no-fly zones or anything else like that. So it's the way we'd like to see BVLOS happening, basically, frankly. So also, this is an important step forward in terms of the wider BVLOS, beyond visual line of sight use. Then it currently feels a little bit exclusionary because, of course, this isn't for the Mini 4 flights at the moment and the recreational flyers and that type of thing. We're still many, many years, if at all, anywhere near BVLOS becoming a thing in those terms. But it is a simple starting point. This isn't something I criticize on the channel. Sometimes I see policies and I see documents that are talking about future flight, that are dealing with, we're going to change the policy, we're going to change legislation in case X, Y, and Z happens, and we think that might happen. This is actually something which is actually happening here and now, basically.
It's going on now, yeah, and it's one of those things where I think you see it as a stepping stone.
Yes.
I see it as a stepping stone. One of the mandatory parts of an operational authorization being given is that there will be a data collection. So the CAA will expect the operator to provide data, and that's so that they can see how it's working. And I would hope that that's been done with a positive view to saying, okay, well, that worked for BVLOS. Can that work in other areas of the specific category, and find ways to allow us to do more
exactly
under whatever methodology of giving a permission.
Exactly. So what is the policy? The title is Atypical Airspace Environments, or AAE for short. We're going to explain what that actually is in just a little bit. I'm going to read some of the explanation from the CAA's press release on this one, and then come back and discuss this with Graham and, of course, all of you. Also, I attended a briefing on this new policy a couple of weeks ago, nearly 3 weeks ago now maybe, and have some thoughts to discuss on that as well, because I think the information that was passed out within that was actually very interesting, frankly. So let me bring up that policy now. You'll still be able to, we can still hear you, Graham, in the background, I think, as well, which is always useful. You're always welcome.
Is there anybody there?
The press release starts off with the at a glance. It's an innovative new policy launched by the UK CAA to help unlock drone flying beyond visual line of sight. The new rules will help industries inspecting infrastructure such as power lines, wind turbines, and site security. I think that end one is quite an interesting one, isn't it, from the point of view of what it could open up. It follows publication of the regulator's roadmap to enabling regular and routine drone operations across society. So not necessarily, does that mean across my house, or it's going across society? That's quite an interesting word.
Have you not looked outside and heard a buzzing noise? I'm already there.
Brilliant. So yes, drone inspecting of obviously a power line. Drones will be deployed for long distance inspection of infrastructure such as power lines, wind turbines, as well as site security, following the new rule changes published today by the UK's aviation regulator. I'm not going to be reading all of this, don't worry. The regulator's new rules will unlock opportunities for innovators. So it isn't just going to be these kind of things, but these are the kind of things that they can see actually happening. I do like this description because
flying guard dogs.
I have to love, you have to love an efficient comms department and being able to come up with a nice tag, because flying guard dogs, I'm surprised that didn't end up as a headline somewhere. The CAA released flying guard dogs on the public.
Guard dogs on the public, on society.
Indeed. So, and Sophia Sullivan there, obviously giving her, now there's a link to this and also the main document actually within it. And it also goes on to talk with one of the companies that's operating on behalf of National Grid. And again, they're not actually ahead of the track. They were working on the CAA sandbox in this. Now, whilst we're talking on these documents, I just want to make sure that changed. It did. I also want to talk about the summary from the CAP document that covers this, which is CAP 3040, which again is linked in the description. And one of the things we have to say is it's quite concise, isn't it? It's 13 pages long.
It is. It's very short. It's very manageable. in some ways it's not often you'll hear me asking for a longer document. In some ways it isn't long enough, but I think that reflects the fact that the CAA itself is feeling its way here. It doesn't know, it knows that it doesn't know all the answers.
Exactly. It also feels a little bit like it's one of those situations where they don't want to specify too much, because obviously otherwise they narrow the opportunity. I mean, they talk about innovation a lot in their press release, and I genuinely think that they are trying to get people to think out of the box here, basically. And do stay tuned, because I will tell you why BVLOS flights above infrastructure will help all of us in the drone industry in the future, and it's an important one. But back to this particular section here of the, is it triggering anybody else that I'm not in the middle of this circle? But anyway, so the summary of this document: the recognition and adoption of an AAE within the UK is an innovative concept for the CAA, as well as airspace users who will operate in or around them. This AAE policy concept is intended to enable UAS BVLOS operations by exploiting defined airspace environments that offer the potential for a reduced MAC, mid-air collision risk, due to their close proximity to ground infrastructure. And we really do mean close. It will help applicants and the CAA determine what is acceptable as an AAE and what operational, strategic and technical mitigations may be necessary to operate within it. So again, fairly open statement there. It is not a single solution for all UAS operations, and is specific to helping address the air risk component of AAE application only. This policy will evolve as our understanding of AAEs are used matures. Of how AAEs are used matures, which is exactly what you were saying in terms of they're kind of putting this out there and saying, right, we're going to evolve this over time. The CAA will closely monitor their use and liaise with successful applicants, adapting and implementing any changes as required. And then they just give a bit more that obviously the AMC GM is something which they would like you to read in conjunction with this document. And my heart goes out to everybody that's going to put one of these together and fulfill the AMC GM on certain parts of it anyway. But it's essentially, in a nutshell, this policy allows beyond line of sight drone flights in areas such as infrastructure, so power lines, wind turbines, site security and rail inspections, etc. These atypical areas can be put forward in an application to the CAA to gain what is effectively confirmation of mitigation of the mid-air collision risk, which is the central part, of course, of the UK visual line of sight legislation. It's the big thing and it's the big reason why we can't just fly our drones wherever we want to, however small they are. By flying inspection and security drones in these areas, you are able to mitigate against the risk. That is partly why this doesn't require a change to the law, because it is a policy in terms of the mitigation. So that's the part to really drill home that's why this doesn't require anything else. So what are examples of an AAE? So 3 letters that you're going to be hearing a little bit on the channel over the coming next couple of years, certainly. From the CAA briefing, these would include within 100 foot of any building or structure, within 50 feet of a permanent above ground level linear structure. So we can all, power lines and railways, etc. For example, railway, road or power line was actually the examples. Within the confines of a private property at a height not exceeding 50 feet. So for example, an industrial site where security personnel use a drone for perimeter inspection. So there's clearly something in terms of the AAE and what it actually is. An AAE is specific to a geographical location and the infrastructure that's established around it. There's no single definition, so there is going to be some flexibility, but applicants will need to define the route and the area of operation, basically. So this isn't like a waiver in the US. In the US, you get a waiver and you can deploy that waiver pretty much anywhere. If you've got a BVLOS waiver or whatever for flying over people, whatever waiver you may hold. Here, the AAE is going to be defined. So you're not going to be able to set up a business flying AAEs and just go from client's property to client's property, etc., doing these things. But you can, if you're, for instance, a security company and you would like regular perimeter searches, that type of thing to be carried out by drone, you can put those sites forward within this permission, basically. So it's interesting, isn't it? It's very close in. 50 feet isn't much. isn't much wiggle
50
room.
feet isn't much to play with, and the wording is and certainly what we've seen is they're not saying 50 feet above ground level.
Yes.
I mean, within 50 feet of a permanent above ground level linear. Oh no, sorry. The one it's the private property within the confines of a private property at a height not exceeding 50 feet. What the property not exceeding 50 feet, and is that 50 feet from the property or 50 feet from the ground?
Yeah.
Because we worked it out, didn't we? It's only a 3-story building.
That's right.
Industrial building, and 50 feet means you've just got a little bit of a buffer over the top.
Yes.
And that's it. 4 stories, and you're crashing into that. So
exactly.
You probably want to be flying higher just from a safety point of view.
It's interesting because obviously what they're trying to do is keep this out of the way of anything else, and including other. If they keep it within 50 feet, you shouldn't come across too many people's Mini 3s flying over that site, etc. If you're keeping that Mini 3 at an appropriate level, unless someone's flying in real close to get that sort of buzzing flight shot of a train going past or something. He says, putting the fear of life out of the anyone from Network Rail that's watching, but yes. So it is limited from that point of view, but that will give us benefits in the future, certainly. So,
but they're also at pains to say that we've given those as guidance, even those distances are guidance, and if you can come up with something that you can show to be safe outside that, then they're prepared to look at it.
Those are examples of AAE, not and again, as per the text I just read out, there is no single definition that's tying it down, basically. So this is supposed to be something flexible. In the briefing, they talked about, in terms of people wanting to apply, being able to reach out to the teams and actually spend some time with them, and actually, because it's new for the CAA, new for the people applying as well. So rather than it being a cold hard form that suddenly you just get a no back from and you've got no idea why, there's a little bit more flexibility. I wish, and I'm sure many others would wish there was that flexibility in other places in terms of applications and that type of thing. But
I'm biting my tongue at the moment, Sean.
But if this is where it starts, and it spreads to other places, then perhaps it's a good thing, basically. So how do you get permission? Well, the CAA's CAP 3008, which I've got here, explains the existing pathways to open to drone operators who want to fly BVLOS operations. There's a few in there that we've all heard of before, but of course many will have seen some of them will have fairly onerous conditions, such as this one here with the reference to BVLOS operation type, special use airspace segregated with temporary danger areas, etc. And I think the one that we probably have seen a lot more of is the BVLOS with visual mitigations. And now,
I mean, I've held one of those out to 2 kilometers.
Nice.
Previously, and funnily, never used it, but so I don't have it now. But and you will see people saying that they've got BVLOS, and you'll see it in LinkedIn and various other places. They forget to
put the VM there, don't they?
They forget to put the VM, which is a little bit easier to get hold of than what I call true BVLOS.
Yes.
We used to call that extended visual line of sight, because you're using other people to extend the view of
is the other one. We do like our acronyms, but also we like changing them, don't we, in the drone industry? It's interesting from that point of view. But 3008 also then, of course, shows here reference 5, the atypical as a policy. It confirms that you need an operational safety case, but of course you do not need an airspace change proposal, and it is not marked therefore as segregated airspace. More details, and you can take your own deeper dive via this 3008, but also CAP 3040, which will both be linked in the description after the show. Now, the highlights in terms of these particular documents is that, so as well as needing to obviously hold the GVC, etc., or in the future whatever that becomes, but at the moment it's obviously GVC, you'll need to apply for an OSC, something that somebody who is sitting on the screen, at least very close to me right now, Graham, has a lot of experience in, both from achieving his own to fly at 1,000 feet, and obviously we just found that he had one at 2 kilometers, but also obviously helping others to gain their own. So Graham, in terms of the complexity in gaining an OSC, and therefore identifying somewhere within that OSC. You've already picked up on a few points in terms of actually 50 feet might not, depending on the operation, might not be the safest height to fly at. How do you feel like the application process will run putting AAE in an OSC format?
Yeah, I think that in most cases for this, that most of them will be carried out in what we would know as A3 airspace, essentially away from congested areas. We'll put security of companies, security of sites to one side for a moment. So that being the case, it does make things a little bit easier, because you won't be going for a multiple OSC with reduced clearance from people. You won't be going to 1,000 feet. You will just be going for this. And bearing in mind that you're going to get a little bit of help and assistance in shaping that from the CAA up front, I think in some ways it may be an awful lot easier, certainly once everybody's got their feet under the table and understand the mitigations that are being considered acceptable. And I think that's probably going to be a process, I'm sorry the CAA if I've got this completely wrong, of over the next few months, everybody's starting to understand what those acceptable ones are and sort of feeding that out gently through hints and however. So I would hope, my concern is that if there's anybody in the chain of command who really doesn't like this idea and will find reasons to stick a spoke in the works, and a stick in the spokes, and we know that happens.
And that's the thing with policy, isn't it, rather than legislation? It's a bit like anything else with any other operational authorization. You don't get, ironically, like the open category in recreational flyers, you don't get to put aside the CAA's guidance and their AMC and GM, etc. You do have to follow that as part of gaining your authorization. And with this policy, again, you're going to be flying under that authorization as well. So it's going to be important. An applicant will obviously therefore submit a 3-volume ORA following the same process really for any other spec category operation requiring an OSC. The MAC risk, the mid-air collision risk, is the absolute focus here. There is a large team involved with the application process, Freudian perhaps. More than 5 teams, in fact, I counted within the briefing, will be involved with the application process. So you will be sort of not, I was about to say bounced around, but you will be carefully directed around the different teams, basically looking at the different aspects, be they technical in terms of the aircraft, or be they in terms of the actual safety mitigations, etc. Now, our deeper dive with members will go more into the technical side, but we were keen to try and keep this show a light touch and accessible by the wider audience. I know sometimes some of our shows can get a little bit heavy on the technical side of things, and I know it's been a little bit. It's still been technical.
Go very deep,
yeah. And if you want to see just how far down a rabbit hole, then me and Graham can go, and then you can certainly look forward to the members' shows on this particular topic. It'll be a complex application. There's no doubt there, because OSCs are not an easy thing to deal with, are they? They're an expensive process, and it is a complex process. But hopefully there'll be enough leeway on both sides and communication on both sides to make things perhaps a little easier.
Do you know what I think is key is that hand holding that the CAA are sort of reaching out and giving, and I think that would help in so many areas that they're working in at the moment. And I know individuals who almost cried down the phone to me because they wanted that for standard ORAs, but there's no such thing as a standard ORA. They're all different.
Right.
And I'm sorry, CAA, I don't see a difference between this and an EVLOS with or BVLOS with visual mitigation, or flying within 5 meters of an individual. I think that's just as risky, if not more so. And I don't see why that offer isn't made elsewhere. But
exactly.
Okay, well.
No, indeed. Now you will see in the press and or already on LinkedIn, etc. In the press, there are already companies talking about how they're going to be using AAE, and you might think, well, have these people got sort of like a head start, etc. But actually, this has been worked on extensively through the CAA BVLOS sandbox, etc., which is a working group of regulator and industry. So some companies are almost there, basically, if not with permission in hand already, which is exciting from that point of view. Now, it's also important to point out that this is BVLOS, not automation. So, things like the drone in a box and that type of thing, there might be some way of using that in the security side of things. But in terms of how I read this policy and the rest of everything else that you need to comply with, then this is still a BVLOS of a piloted uncrewed aircraft. This isn't.
There's still a man on the end of it, somewhere.
Yes. Now that is, of course, down to you in terms of how that happens. Whether who knows? Can you get something signed off where you have 3 drones flying down different railway lines or the same railway line with 2 pilots watching them to jump in? Similarly, perhaps that they do with the delivery drone side of things. Who knows? But that'll be down to obviously the individual applications. But it'll be interesting to see. And I think in a year we'll know just how the CAA feel about this kind of thing, really, won't we, in terms of it being dealt with this way? Because as you say, there are ways to stop this as much as ways to help it when it's a policy, basically.
In a year, that 13-page document will be released as a 200-page document.
Yes, let's mark the date and let's see if that actually happens. And if we are then talking about 3040 being refreshed to 189 pages, then we'll have to wait and see. Now, this is obviously a first step. And this isn't going to be helping you fly your Mini 3 BVLOS or even being able to do ad hoc roof surveys, because I suppose if you do the same place you could possibly get it an application through it, although it would be a very expensive roof survey. This is an expensive, complex process. Yes, it's designed for industry and the higher ends of it, but it's a first step, and this is going to be used to prove the safety of drones when they're flown BVLOS, frankly, beyond visual line of sight. Where that takes us in the future, I think, is actually quite exciting. I'm hopeful about this particular policy and where it moves us towards. This should be, in my opinion, supported by the drone community and industry, as it's an important step. Also, it's one that does not close airspace to other users, and I think that is something which is
really, really important. This is something that says no. We are not doing the certainly on this. We're not saying, oh yeah, that's a railway line. No, can't fly near that because there might be a drone doing BVLOS.
Yes.
It's not. We're closing this bit of airspace because there might be an Amazon drone coming along in 5 minutes. That isn't the way they're looking at this, and this is a really good sign, I think.
It is, because they're saying to the companies doing this, you need to tell us how you're going to avoid the other aircraft, the other drones that are flying perfectly legally. How are you going to mitigate that risk rather than them having to do something?
What I would say is that if in a few months' time you see that you're flying somewhere and somebody's put up a little thing on Drone Assist saying BVLOS flight along this thing, what I'd say is, please respect that. Give them a call. Say, I'm wanting to fly it.
I mean,
I think
which is good airmanship, isn't it? And
this, the better. Yeah, it's good airmanship.
Yeah, and you have to argue that would be part of safety as well, wouldn't it? From the point of view of actually, it's a safe flight to make sure that you've checked drone assist and NOTAMs and everything else like that. And yes, if somebody else is flying, to be frank, if I see a little blue circle where someone said they're flying to capture a cruise ship or something when I'm out flying, I keep an eye on it, and it's very useful information. Often there won't be any contact details on those kind of things, but these things you will expect that to be on there. So yeah, it's interesting. It will be interesting to see if they request people to do that, from the point of view of whether or not they request drone flyers, if you're going to fly in those zones, to please mark your drone flights on Drone Assist, etc. It's going to be interesting from that point of view, isn't it?
It's a difficult one to push. It's not a legal requirement.
Yeah, and it's always that sort of, what is supporting and what is helping things and what is, almost regulation through the back door type of thing. I think what we need to be careful from that point of view, and not hopefully have that happening too much, basically. So,
and we've also got the thing that this. If you're going for this, you probably want either a project that's paying you a lot of money or a long-term project, because bear in mind you'll get your operation authorization, and I can only imagine it's going to be one of those horrible annual things, and that in 6 months to 9 months time you'll be looking at doing a rewrite or an update to the latest version of the policy, which may go through or it may get held
Yes.
up, and you've got frustration there. And this is not an investment friendly process we've got at the moment, where we have annual authorizations. A year goes by very, very quickly in the drone world, because actually we can't necessarily,
Yeah.
a lot of places operate all year.
I have seen,
there are
I have
seasons.
seen, and I don't know whether it's even in the CAA or elsewhere, campaign suggestions or something, but I have seen suggestion of things like OAs going to 2 years and that type of
They've
thing.
talked about PDRA ones. I think the CAA mentioned in one of the documents, but it could even have been the consultation. But somewhere they've talked about 2-year PDRAs, which would make perfect sense.
It would, because it would allow businesses. I mean, the amount of companies we spoke to at DroneX that are trying to plan for the future and that type of thing, a couple of years gives them a little bit more meat to be able to really invest into it and grow it, and then see what they need. They would probably want to change things in 2 years, so it seems like a reasonable time. So interestingly, actually, we spoke just there about the public consultation, and the consultation on this topic, which was something we discussed here on Geeksvana at length, gained a total of, wait for it, drum roll, 239 responses, which in actual fact, for a technical thing, bearing in mind there are how many OSCs? Is it 109, 110, 103? Okay.
103, I'm reliably informed.
Yeah, OSCs. So actually 239 responses across in the aviation industry. In terms of the user base, isn't that bad, but it would be nice to see those response rates much higher from the point of view of other people putting in responses and that type of thing. But we'll have to wait and see. Now, it is important to emphasise that the CAA, in the briefing, but also in their documents, they do recognise that this is not going to be useful to many operators, but it is the first step, and time will expand the use and options. Now, I'm always happy to criticize the CAA when required, etc., and to hold to account. But personally, I think this feels like we need lots more of this to move the industry. Yeah. Lots more of these things happening.
This is the show we've been wanting to do for the last 18 months, 2 years.
That's it, exactly. BVLOS moving forward.
Oh my God, it's
what comes beyond this. Because actually, does the atypical policy document become 100 pages next? Because it allows you to do so many more options, and actually atypical, and then there becomes other atypical versions of atypical, etc. And then you start having ad hoc versions of this, etc. That actually, if you fly within these safety parameters, you can fly at any building within 10 meters, etc., with a NOTAM or something. There's so many ways that this can go forward, and suddenly becomes something that somebody flying with a PDRA 01, and I don't want to use the bolt-on thing, but almost of that type of thing could then start getting standard permissions. Complex permissions could one day become standardized permissions, and I think that's exciting. And if you conflict this to the story in the USA this week, which was the FAA story, where a couple of whistleblowers essentially have come forward to say that the beyond visual line of sight new legislation is essentially being held in one of the Washington offices and just not actioned, not pushed forward at all, basically, which is incredible. And obviously the industry are up in arms about that this week, from the point of view that it's holding up an entire industry who thought they were just waiting for something to get signed off. So at least we're seeing some progress. At least it isn't waiting for legislation, and it isn't waiting for some kind of magical future flight moment to happen, basically, and air taxis and everything else to happen. This is actually what's happening now, and hence the press releases from some of the companies, such as National Grid, etc., and the company working on their behalf. That it's happening right now. These flights are going to start to happening. So that is data pouring into the CAA about BVLOS, and about, of course, how, because it is safe, and all of that data is going to be something which is going to help us all in the future, frankly.
Yeah, and the nice thing, as you say, it doesn't require alien technology. Yes. There are, I suspect that there are drones out there that people are operating today for this sort of work which can be adapted and brought up to an appropriate standard.
Yes, exactly. And Simon is picking up on the RPC levels and how that will allow BVLOS. Exactly. That's going to be another route to this kind of thing. But actually, wildly varying options as well, because of course part of the RPC hierarchy at the higher level will be people being able to fly essentially delivery drones, but also surveillance drones, everything else like that within the manned system, and actually landing and taking off at general aviation aerodromes, which is going to be incredible, isn't it? Really, I mean, you have to say it's absolutely incredible. Alex, good to see you. Is your view that this will be for a specific location? Yes, as per our chat tonight. Yes, it will be something. They have stated that it will be specific geographical locations, basically, rather than it being an ad hoc. Hopefully, ad hoc will come. But
I think that they've also said that in theory you could say, if you've got 5 sites, you could put 5 sites in an ORA and submit it. But I think they've said that please don't do that today, one at a time. So if you want 5 sites, raise 5 ORAs. But I would say raise 1, get that through, and then cut and paste with appropriate changes for the risks on a specific site. They are taking this one step at a time and learning as they go.
I have to say, I'm loving Michaela and Amok, Scott, etc., chatting about my VLOS traffic lights and actually remembering it as well from our VLOS video. Thank you, guys. It did take a while to come up with that particular traffic light system. I'm pleased people are using it. And the final question from Alex: if 50 foot is AAE, then how is ARCC is 51 feet? How was that TLS being defined if 51 feet is thus safe? What about 50? And Graham mentioned that very early on, actually, Alex, that and the CAA, in terms of their wording and in terms of how they've put these things together, the 50 foot is examples they've provided. So I think that if you have,
they're allowing flexibility.
Exactly. And if you have the operating safety case put forward with mitigation where it's safe at 100 feet for whatever reason for that location, then, I think they'd be open to it. I think that we almost need to start thinking from the point of view where we need to, they need to keep things as flexible as possible rather than specifying too much. And that seems to be the language which is coming out of things as well. So I know a video from the briefing is available, Alex, so it might be worthwhile getting hold of that. Mark Asset Drones, good to see you as well. Hope you're well. And PD Tech saying he confesses to flying his Neo BVLOS today behind a bush in his garden. Well,
hang your head in shame,
sir. We will be sending the I won't say literal drone police, but perhaps the spiritual drone police to your location immediately. So yes. Dan the Drone Man, I'm in Manchester and Graham is several hundred miles away and I've been able to keep VLOS off him. I love it. It's the shirts again, Graham. You see, your shirts are becoming a character.
I think somebody's pointed out that if you drape this over a drone, you could see the drone quite some distance away.
Yes. Oh dear, it could become the new thing, basically. Excellent. So this is something, as I say, exciting. We don't want to get too technical about it this evening. If you want the technical review, that will be given with pleasure. Myself and Graham have already spoken for many hours about this, and we can speak for many hours more. We do have a couple of sessions coming up for members on this, which includes a special guest or two in there as well, who will be able to answer some specific questions and help from that point of view. So there we go. I think we did quite well, frankly, getting all of that into about 40 minutes.
45 minutes. Yeah.
That's impressive. Is it the Peruvian garments that has given us the spiritual power,
spirit guide.
The spiritual power to get through things in a quick way. So hopefully that's in a non-technical way that everybody not gonna let me speak down to anybody in terms of understanding, but in terms of giving you an indication of whether this would interest you or not, but also letting you know how this might impact you in the future and everybody else with their drones. If you see these things happening, if you see there's an AAE happening in your area for the railways, etc., don't panic in terms of your recreational flying. They're not going to be taking airspace space away from you. This is progressive from that point of view. So yes. So I'll say Sean out, and I'll leave the last words as ever to Graham and that Peruvian. It's actually. Can we have the hood up, please?
Oh yeah. I think we should, shouldn't we? There we go.
There we go. And Graham, looking about as ute as he's ever looked, will now give us the final words of the show.
Isn't it, man? Fly legally, fly safely, but fly with flair.
Did you just say, isn't it, man? Thanks, everyone.